training session for today is about in-house quality, the ISO, the standards, and what the standards mean and what they imply, and also the system that we use to implement our system. Okay, we've got a paperless system. This is Mr. Abdallah Gani, that's Mohammed. They're from EQS, they are consultants, and they will tell you when the change date routine when the training starts. So, that's the
excellent. Thank you. Good morning. We've been with Abdallah now 2 years. Is it up to 2 years here?
yeah.
About 2
years.
It's
over 2 years.
Yeah. We're helping keeping your certification on the wall, meaning that we help you with your management reviews and the whole cycle that keeps the certification together. Now, these awareness trainings are just for individuals that come in so that they have a good grounding of quality. A lot of things that we'll be talking about today, you know them already probably. So it's just to remind ourselves of what this quality management system is all about and where you fit into the quality management system. Okay? To start, it always helps if we could have a quick run around. I just want to know what part of the organization everybody is in, just the name and just what department you are in, so that while we're going through the training, I might be talking to you guys. Let's start from this side. Finance. All right. Finance.
Please from Project Soil and Gas Sales Department.
Sales.
From Logistics.
Logistics.
And started from operations and safety.
Operations and safety, all right.
Vishnu from foundations.
Foundations.
Mayawal from business development and procurement.
Business development.
From
Sales.
From Sales.
From sales.
Abhishek from sales.
From sales. I think we have a good mix of sales in here. All right. So just like Leo said, I'm Abdallah Gani. I represent a company called Environmental and Quality Solutions. And what we do is we usually help companies get to certification. ISO 9001 for quality, 14,000 health and safety, and 18,000 and all of that. And we help companies maintain their certification as well. And we also get them software solutions to help ease the paperwork that is involved in managing some of these management systems. Okay? We'll be looking at that in a little bit as we go along. Now, to start, usually I would like to hear something like, what's your perception of quality? What does it mean to you? The word quality, what does it mean to you? When I say quality, what comes to your mind? What would you say is quality? How would you describe it as far as you're concerned as an individual?
Standardization.
Standardization. All right, so that means when you say standardization, things are done in a standard way. That is quality, in your perception?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So consistency. If it's done the same way all the time, that is quality.
Or the better way.
Pardon me?
Or the better way every day.
Or the better way every time. All right. So there is some continual improvement in it as well. Pardon me?
Minimizing the errors.
Minimizing errors. So error-free depicts quality to you. All right. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's take an example. We'll be hearing a lot of examples today related to food because I've not had breakfast yet. It's always like that. Restaurant. Let's look at a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant, what is your perception of quality in a restaurant? What would you say if you come out of a restaurant and you say, that's a quality restaurant? What would it relate to? What is quality?
Because you certify yourself that the food which you eat, you are certified with this food.
I had food. Food. So if the food is good, quality. All right? But is it just the food? Hygiene, cleanliness. Oh, right. Service. Yeah. I wait for my bill for 30 minutes. However good the food is, probably I don't come out with a good perception of quality. Right? And that's the whole purpose of this. We need to understand that quality is beyond the product. Okay? In the restaurant, the product is the food. In a cellar probably is your products that are lying out there in the yard. But your quality is far beyond the product that is in the yard and how well it or fit for purpose it is. Alright? What sales does, how they interact with the customer, how you do logistics, get the things at the right place at the right time, and all of that comes together to form a perception of quality for your client. Way beyond the quality of your, steel. Right? And that's the whole idea of ISO 9001. We are not looking at the quality of a product. In fact, you are not allowed to put ISO 9001 on your product itself. Because it's not the product that is ISO 9001 certified, it's your management system that is. Okay? So it's the management of every process you have from a customer saying, I need something, up to the time that he says, thank you very much, you've delivered and I'm happy. Everything in between is what we cover as a process in ISO 9000. Okay? Interesting? Yeah? It's a very, very boring subject, quality. Very boring. You have to try hard to make people not see. All right, let's move on. Now, go to the next slide for me, Mohammed. Let's start from the beginning. Some of the basics. Speak on ISO. What is ISO? A lot of people think so. Yeah? You're probably right. A lot of people say the same, but it is not. Okay? It is not a direct abbreviation. If it was, it would have been IOS, because it is International Organization for Standardization. That's the name of the organization. All right? Now, ISO, as we see it today, comes out of a Greek word called isos, meaning equal. Isometric equations, equal proportion dimension, equal. All right? Why equal? Standardization, like you said. Same thing wherever it is. If you are ISO 9001 certified in Hong Kong and you are ISO 9001 certified here, you have the same standard. You speak the same language when it comes to management systems. All right? Now, why would they go with an acronym? We call it an acronym instead of an abbreviation. It has something to do with the history of the standards and how they all started, which we'll be looking at in a little bit. Okay? But if they said it will be an abbreviation, that means in French it will be different, in German it will be different, in English it will be different, and they didn't want that because the spirit of the organization is for it to be a global standards organization. Yeah. You know? Now what about these numbers? Where did they get all these numbers from? 9,001, we have 14,000, 1,001, 2, 3, all of that. Where did they all come from? Interesting questions, aren't they? These are some of the questions as a consultant a long time ago when I started at Qshare. Why did they call it 9,000? And I went like, give me a few days to find out. Because to be honest, I didn't know until we went and searched and looked. And there is really no reason why it is 9,000 except that they just went to the nearest round figure. If you trace back to the history of the standards are like a law book. All right? It has got clauses in it saying what you need to do. A company shall do this and that and that and that to comply with this. Now those clauses, when they were compiling the ISO 9001 we know today, stopped at 8,789, an odd number like that. And they just said, let's take it to the nearest round figure, 9,000. And the series started. And then they started 14,000, that's for environmental. Then 18,000 for health and safety. All right? And then several others that started coming in, which we'll be talking about in a little while. But one thing I want to clarify you on is that you might be hearing 9001, 2, and 3. Before, we had 9001, 2, and 3 as conformance standards. When we say conformance, that means you can put your system together, call an auditor and certification body, they will give you a certificate for it. Today, these two are no more as conformance standards. So any company that tells you we are ISO 9002 certified or ISO 9003 certified, they cannot be. It doesn't exist anymore. All right? Everybody that is ISO 9000 certified will be 9001. But just for knowledge, why did we have that 1, 2, and 3 before? The reason was because they wanted to differentiate the companies based on what they're certified on, but it didn't work. The only difference between 1 and 2 is one element, design. So if you do design, and it goes to the root of your contract with your client, you'll be ISO 9001 certified. If not, you'll be ISO 9002 certified. And 9003 is only for final inspection and testing. So some laboratories, they only want 9003 for that final inspection and testing. Even as a doctor could take that for your dispute. You just want the final inspection and testing bit to be certified, not the whole management system. Then you'll be ISO 9000. Okay? But there was a lot of confusion. Oh, 9001 is the first number, so it's higher, or no, this is a higher number, so it's a better standard. No, it had nothing to do with that. All right? So you could have An architectural firm with only 2 people, they're architects. Design is what they do. It goes to the root of their contract with their customers. It will be 9,001. And you could have a company as large as, what, a textile firm with thousands of employees. They don't talk to you to make the fabrics and the designs. They just make them and put them in the market. If you like them, buy them. So no design interaction between the client and the company. 9,000. Okay. Questions? You can stop me anytime and ask me questions.
Now that you were saying that 9,002 and 3 is being removed,
Yes.
there is nothing, no significant. So how do you adjust those companies which were under 9,002 or 3%?
Very good question. They all became 9,001. Yeah, they all became 9,001. Then it is up to the auditors that come in, the certification body, to make the justification. Within your documentation, you must justify if you have design or you don't have design. If you say, no, I don't have design, they will say, all right, let us see your system, and we will tell you if your interaction with your customer involves design. And if it does, they will tell you, we will not certify you until you put those design elements in there. But now all that confusion is gone, everybody is 9,000.
And if they are not able to, if the auditors are not able to prove that there is a design involved in the process, so no problem, then they can certify them as 9,001?
Yes. They will still certify them as 9,001 without the design. Then that means it's a justifiable exclusion. Yes, absolutely. And it's the same with several things that are in Section 7, which we'll be looking at later on. You might not believe it, there are some companies that don't do purchasing. Is that possible?
Like companies don't do what?
Purchasing.
They don't do purchasing.
They don't buy anything that has any relation to the quality of what they produce or what they sell their customers.
Yeah, there are many companies.
So they can take that exclusion as well under Section 7. But we'll be looking at that in a little bit. But that was a very, very good question. All right. Now, some of the interesting bits. Who woke up one day and just decided we need to have standards? How did it all come about? What's the history of all this idea of standards for companies so that we can assure quality? Any idea? I'll give you a clue.
Global standards for the internet.
Yeah. Global standards, in the sense that, all right, we have a supplier, we have a customer. And a customer is concerned about the performance of the supplier, and he needs something more than him coming to check that shows he has a system that can assure him quality of what is being supplied. How far back do you think we can trace that kind of relationship and those kind of problems in the world? I'll give you a clue. Let's go back to the Second World War. That's about the time that standards as we know them today started forming. Who would be interested in quality during the Second World War? Who fights wars?
I mean, the forces which are using this equipment?
The military, absolutely. Absolutely. The root of standards as we know them today came out of military requirements, you understand, during the Second World War. All right? The Allies and the Americans, they were having big problems with defense contractors. What does it mean for low quality product for the military? That means ordnance that is exploding in storage. Goodness. Or planes that fall out of the sky in the middle of combat. Or a gun that won't fire, it's jammed. What does it mean? It's a matter of life and death for them. All right? And remember what we said at the beginning. Quality is not only the quality of the product. What about as a general, I've got an offensive I'm planning, and I've got certain things that need to be supplied, and they come late. What does that mean to me for my strategy? I could be overrun because I don't have supplies on time. So logistics, loads of other things that the suppliers are involved in, they have to have some kind of guarantee that these things are being done well. And it has to be beyond just telling them what they need to know. Put a system in place, I want to come and audit it and make sure that you're following what you need to follow. Assurance, not refixing things after you've done them wrong. No. We want to make sure that you have got all the processes in place to ensure the outcome is one and not anything else. Consistency. Yeah? Now that's how far back we can trace it. After the war, what did they decide? I mean, the British had their BS standards, the Americans had their ANSI standards, there were several of them. Even the Japanese had theirs. All these kind of standards were popping up from around the world. All right? Then it was decided, well, why don't we come together and put something together so that at least there was some form of standardization in the world. Okay? Let's move on. Standardizing businesses. When they came in, they said, these standards that we've learned a lot about, why don't we put it so that business can benefit as well? All right? So for example, if we're going to look at things, what other standards do you think are there that are managed by the International Organization for Standardization? What other standards do you think are there? We just talked of quality, health and safety, environmental. These are performance standards. What about other standards? Do you think there are other standards?
Centimeters, not like inches.
Absolutely.
System of pounds and weight.
Absolutely, 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 and thousands more, and that's perfect, definite, and thousands. In fact, today the International Organization for Standardization has somewhat over 27,000 standards. All right, some of them we use them every day. We've even forgotten their standards. In fact, if you look at it, you think, how will the world ever function without these standards? Right? What about if I told you that every one of us in this room probably, most likely has an ISO standard in his wallet? What would it be? An ISO standard in your wallet? Close, but not quite.
The ID card.
ID card also very close, but not. Oh yes, credit cards, for example. Yes, 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 yes. The thickness of a credit card, the dimension of a credit card, where the strip is. That's why you can fly halfway across the world, slot it into any ATM machine. I can guarantee you money will come, but it will fit. Right? It will fit. And that's because it's a standard. Okay? Electricity, 220, 240. Standard, 110. Standard. Alright? Imagine electricity, 110 and that 220. How much havoc does it cost some of us that travel frequently? What adapter do I need? What about if every country had its own voltage? Absolutely, it would be gas. So that's it. With so many other things around the world, standards for toys. Today I'm a wheelchair manufacturer. I don't just create my wheelchair. No, there is a standard for the height, for the width, for everything. Why? Because it has to fit so many other equipment that is designed for disabled people. From aircraft handling stuff, or from toilets and many other things. It has to fit. So you have to design it according to those standards. Right? So these standards really, really help make our lives a lot easier. I'm sure a lot of young people will say, oh, you guys, how did you survive without standards before? They have to be there. Okay?
Before we go further,
Yeah, go ahead.
one thing that you raised is standard credit card. Why we are talking World War II, which is now more than 70 years.
Yeah.
Still we follow, including in our product, that this is, or you go to the toilet, including this is American standard, this is still, we have this kind of thing. Why we are not able to generate a sync? Why the organization is so powerful and the need is so necessary, why we still don't have the sync? Because even today we face this problem that we want to sell our product, but we say no, this is as per American standard, we need as per Japanese standard.
Absolutely. Another very, very good question. And that is because these people are still work in progress. As the International Organization for Standardization is still work in progress. And remember, when we come to the structure of the International Organization for Standardization, we'll understand a little more. But let me talk about it. Who is in this International Organization for Standardization? They are representatives of countries. So in every country, you have a standards organization, those that deal with standards. They have representatives in what we call technical committees in the International Organization for Standardization, which is in Geneva. Okay? Now, what they do is, they look at a potential problem. Just like now you've raised one. Probably there is a technical committee member, maybe from one country or the other, that comes in and says, hey, this is a big harbor for people that deal with steel. Why can't we put our heads together, all of you representatives, let's decide on what we need to do. And That's a serious debate in most cases. Because everybody wants to preserve his. The Japanese will say, no, our standard is the best. The Americans will say, we want to keep ours and this is our reason. Until they reach a consensus, it will not happen. Because at the end of the day, these are also sovereign governments. They have the right to do what they want to. Okay? This is a consensus. So let me give you an example. We've got, for example, the measurement of syringes. Okay? Some do it in milliliters, some do it in milliliters or whatever. Now they come in, all of them, technical committee with experts from every country that is a member in the medical devices field. And they sit and say, listen, we have to make a decision. You measure it in this, you measure it in that. We have a potential problem. What is the problem? They will make a case. We have nurses now that are being trained in one part of the world, and they are working in another part of the world. I learned everything in milliliters, now I'm having syringes that is in another. And you know how human beings are. Sometimes we don't just look at we just remember, oh, it was at this length, and that's usually our potential problem for significant issues. They will look at it and they will realize the importance of that standardization based on what if it goes wrong, how bad can it be? All right? Now, that is what makes some of these countries say, all right, I am ready to let go of mine just to avert problems and we have to get this standard. Then they will adopt. But in most cases, you are right. If there is no significant issue really that is strong, everyone will say, no, I'm going to just hold on to mine and that's it. You know? And it's a continual process that eventually, when they see the light on, it makes life easier for everyone. It makes things cheaper. It makes things easier to run. Then they will eventually get through. Good question.
On a broader scale, we have seen the standardization in metal or any other product, like before, one of the harmonized system approach, for example.
Right.
This is good enough. This gives you the same notification gives in America or Australia.
Right.
But I do not know how far it will go when it comes to the grades and all, because there are a lot of regional requirements apart from the way you conduct yourself in a particular country.
Right.
Culturally, the environmental conditions also forces you to follow certain. Because Japanese standard maybe equivalent to a certain degree to this of American standard, but there will be some exceptions,
Right.
some parameters. So I do not know whether it will go, because we are talking now for the last 70 years if we have started.
Yep.
And we are nowhere close to any solution. Because, and I also see that at times there is commercial reason behind this, that people don't want to go for it. That's how they protect their niche.
Absolutely.
And they would not like to give up so easily.
Absolutely. It's a complex world out there. There are so many interested parties, so many pressure groups, so many things that really affect some of these decisions. And eventually they will get to it, I hope, but usually that's the way that some of these things go. Good questions. Excellent. Now, let us look at a little bit about hierarchy. We've talked of this international organization for standardization. Then we've got we call accreditation bodies. Who are they? Then we've got certification bodies like who certifies? ABS, Lloyd, DNB. Several of them are there. And then there are people like me that call ourselves consultants and coming. Who is doing all of this? What do they do? Okay, let's have a quick look at that. The standards organization is in Geneva, like we discussed. Okay, it's international, and everybody has got some kind of representation, and they put things together, to churn out as standards around the world. Accreditation bodies do not give certificates to anyone as such. They have nothing to do with that. Accreditation bodies are given accreditation rights by the International Organization for Standardization itself. Okay. Now, these accreditation bodies are the ones now that give certification bodies the accreditation they need to give certification to companies. All right? That is now bringing us to ABS, which will have to have an accreditation from one of the accreditation bodies to be able to give a certificate specifically in your industry. Okay? And these accreditation bodies are several. Most of them are regional oriented. Like we've got ANSI-RAB, we've got UCAS, United Kingdom Accreditation Services. We've got JAPSI, the Japanese. We've got several of them are out there. COFRAC for the French. All right. These accreditation bodies and certification bodies have to have accreditation before they can certify. All Right? So if you look at your certificate closely, you'll find out that there is the ABS, but there must be an accreditation body as well on there. Okay? Which I think most probably will be ANSI rather. Because Americans.
You are saying the certification bodies are like ABRs or Bureau Radars?
Yes. Yes. Those are the certification bodies. And they cannot perform without having accreditation from an accreditation body. And that accreditation is not blanket. It's not that you are just accredited. No. You are accredited for shipping services. You are accredited for steel manufacturing. You are accredited for this and that specific industries.
But one certification body can have the accreditation from more than one?
Yes. Yes. They can have several accreditation from several bodies. In fact, some of them you come to them and you say, I'm in the logistics field and I want a UCAS certificate. They will say, oh, unfortunately we don't have UCAS accreditation, but we have ANSI or we have JASI. Good question. Okay? Then at the bottom we've got people like consultants, same qualifications with these, but what we do is we come in, help you prepare for these examiners when they come in to have a look at some of the things that you're doing, so that they can recommend you for certification. Actually then, who does the certification? They only recommend. Technically, these are the guys that back your certification. Okay? So whenever an auditor comes in and he says, oh, I'm fine, I like it, it's all perfect, I'll recommend you for continuous certification. He means these guys have to look at it. In most cases they don't, but they can before he can give you the certificate. So they are under audit by these people to audit this. So these guys can come into your certification body anytime and say, give me a sample of 5 certificates, I'm going to go to ArcelorMittal and I'm going to check. Okay? And you see accreditation body people coming to actually check that these guys did their work in the certification body. And for the consultants, we just help prepare you for these guys. And these guys should not have anything to do with these guys and these guys vice versa. Why?
Otherwise it would be a very biased or
Yes. There's conflict with be there. Yeah? I mean, when I was in school, it would be really nice if I was the one setting my own exam questions and the one answering them. It would be really cool. But that's the way it is. Here, you cannot be this and be this at the same time.
I don't surprise many people who are giving these certification bodies starting their own consultancy.
They leave certification bodies and start consultancy? Yeah, but then they can't do certification anymore. Yeah. Then they can't do certification anymore. Ideally. Ideally. But you know rules are meant to be broken, isn't it? But ideally that is the way it should be. And any organization is for their benefit to ensure that there is that difference. Okay? Because who is the one to tell you that we do our jobs well? It's these guys. Right? And that's why that what you call it, separation needs to be. Okay? Questions? Good. Let's move. Now, this slide is quite an important slide. And why? Because this gives you a quick snapshot of the hierarchy of documentation in your organization. Okay? We've got ISO 9001 document structure. We've got the quality policy at the top. The quality policy is the apex document in your quality management system. Usually it is not more than a page, and it is a statement from top management of what they expect as far as quality is concerned in the organization. Okay? And usually it does have keywords like continual improvement, auditing, customer satisfaction. Those keywords are always in there, buzzwords we call them, okay, in your quality policy. Now your quality policy is just like the constitution in an organization. Nothing can go contrary to your quality policy. It's the apex document. Every other document under it must complement it. Okay? Under that we've got what we call your quality manual. Okay? We'll show you how you can access all these documents on the Qshare portal. What is your quality manual? What's the purpose of it? What do you think the purpose of a quality manual will be? You buy a VCR or you buy a car, does it come with a manual? What does it do?
It indicates how to utilize the
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what that manual does. It's one of the most valuable documents you have in the organization, especially if you're new to the organization. Pick it up, and straight away you will see all of the key processes in your organization and where to find detailed procedures and documentation related to that key process. Okay? That's one function of the manual. Another function for the manual is for those certification bodies that we just saw in the last slide. They also, when they come in, is the first document they will want to pick because it is a bridging document. When I say bridging, what do I mean? It is bridging the requirements of the standard, where you have that logbook that says a company shall do this and that, with where to find it in your documentation. Okay? So you will notice that the language in the manual is usually like, for purchasing, section 7 point this, that of the standard that says we should do this and this and this. You can find details, procedures of how we do it in our procedure number this, that. What has it done? It has bridged that. Okay? So as an auditor, if I pick up how to audit purchasing, I just look at that same section and where are those procedures to tell you if it's human audit, right? Okay? So that's the purpose of that. Quite a valuable document. We'll show you where it is in your system in a minute. Then you've got your quality procedures. One big difference between the two that we just discussed and your quality procedures is confidentiality. From here, depending on the policy in your organization, this is confidential. This should not leave your organization. This is not things you share with other people. From here up, normally you share with customers, you share with people, all right? Because really it doesn't go into the nitty-gritty of how you do your things, things to do with intellectual property or stuff like that, or methods and stuff like that. But when we go into procedures now, this is where we go to the nitty-gritty of how you do your things. Okay? And the number of procedures you have depends on the organization. We'll be showing you a tab on procedures as well and how they are classified in your organization. Okay? Then we've got work instructions. What's the difference between a procedure and a work instruction? What do you think is the difference? From just that terminology. Sometimes it's very interchangeable.
It defines the steps involved in all of that process?
That's quite true. That's a very good way of putting it. Actually, yes. So it will be related to a procedure, but there are certain people that are not at this level of the procedure. You know, he needs a work instruction to take out a part of a procedure and just tell him quick steps of what he needs to do. All right? So for example, if I'm, forklift operator in your yard, do I need to go and open the procedure for storage, preservation, and delivery? Why? All he needs to know is what to pick, what the start heights are, check your forklift before you do this and that. That's all he needs. So it comes out with the work instruction. And usually, the manager or the person responsible for the process in the procedure is the one that makes the determination whether a work instruction is necessary or not. Okay? And that determination, of course, is looking at the people that need to read that procedure. Are they at that level, or can I make it easier for them so that I just target what they need to know as quickly as possible in bullet points? Okay? Then, at the bottom of the pile, we've got records. These are loads of records that you are generating as you go along your comply with your procedures and work instructions. Okay? Any questions? This is a very important slide. I'll tell you why. Auditors, when they come into an organization, they come with a perception. They want to see evidence that people are part of the organization and they understand these things. One of the worst things that would go wrong is for an auditor to ask an individual, can I see your quality manual, and you pick a procedure and show. Or, what does your quality policy say? And you say, well, in the quality manual we have these basics, at least we should know them. All right? At least we should know what document it's talking about. And when we come to the software, you'll see that it is clear on the tabs. It's just not possible to make a mistake. Okay? All right, Mama. All right, these are the requirements of the standard. I'll be very brief and fast on this. Leo, how are we doing on time? No problem. It's okay, no problem. Yeah. I'll go very quickly on this, but speakers will be giving you access to the standards, so you can have the standards, you can do that, and then there is a video as well you can watch at your own leisure, no problems. But just to give you a quick overview, the Quality Management System Standard ISO 9001-2000 gives you requirements that start from section 4. Many people used to ask, why section 4? That's just how it is. The others are just scope, normative, whatever. Then it starts the requirements from section 4. Okay? And it is classed several requirements under each one of these sections. The first section is quality management system, meaning define your quality management system. How is it defined? All right? Who is in there? Then section 5, management responsibility. What is the responsibility of management in the organization? All right? We have an MD, we have a finance manager, what are their responsibilities? Where does their responsibility start and the next person's responsibility continues in the process chain? Okay? Then, section 6 is resource management. What are the resources necessary for us to satisfy our customer? All right? Moving to this facility is already an indication of the organization had looked at resources required to be able to meet your customer requirements quicker, faster, and more efficiently. All right? Then we go to section 7, which is the largest section of the standard. All right? And that is where you actually define the whole process from the start, when you have an inquiry from your customer, up to the end when you deliver a quality product to your customer at the right time, at the right place. Okay? And that section 7 as well, like we discussed at the beginning, your question, is the only section that you can remove something and say, I don't do it. Okay? We call them exclusions. And your auditor will now look at that and justify those exclusions, whether they are right or wrong. Okay? And one that is always contentious, for example, is customer supplied property. Do we have customer supplied property in Asilimta? Have we addressed that in your management system?
Not on stock sales, but for heat pads, foundation.
Right.
Sometimes the customer rents out that and returns it to us. And but it's not on a big scale. It's only that filing, right?
All right. Did you address it in your management system,
No,
or
that
did you
falls,
claim exclusion?
That falls under a different section. It's excluded for now.
Okay, all
but
right.
it falls under a different section.
All right. So you see, a lot of companies do exclude that. When we say customer supplied property, the definition is there any point in time that the customer gives you something and you have to have processes to take care of that something and return it to him in the condition he gave you? All right? If you do that, then you will have to have a procedure for customer supplied property. Okay? What kind of company do you think customer supplied property would be very important? Absolutely. They move things around, logistics. I take your thing, I have to take it. Customer supply. In fact, they thrive on it. Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah, if you are going to give them certified true copies of certain things to keep, absolutely, absolutely.
Labs.
Laboratories, yeah. If you are actually going to give them something, they need to return it back, test it and return it back to you. Non-destructive for testing and all of that. Yes, absolutely. Who drives a Toyota? Good car. Al-Futain, when you go in there for servicing, that guy that comes with his little and starts going around the car and checking things, what procedure is he following? Absolutely. Customer supply property procedures. For them is this thick. Because their whole work is really related to making sure they take care of your car, no oils, no whatever, and give it back to you as much as possible in the condition they do. Yeah. But some, not at all. So in that section, they crammed everything that you might want to remove or you might want to do. Every other section in the standard, you must do it if you want to get certification. Okay? Then section 8, what is the value of all of this quality management system if we cannot measure and analyze? Where do we get to continual improvement? You mentioned continual improvement. It's part of the standard. In fact, when your auditor comes in, you must show him objective evidence of continual improvement for him to continue your certification. You must show him an area where you were not doing so well, but this time you are doing better. All right? Or if there is no room for improvement, then you are maintaining that highest peak of performance. Okay? Continual improvement is important, but we cannot do it or measure it or achieve it without measuring and without analyzing. So if it is customer complaints, how many customer complaints have we had in the last 1 year? Analysis. How many of them are actually related to late deliveries? Analysis. After that, what about the next year? How many of them are there? So you start looking at. The management can say, all right, I have the picture now. Why is it more? What resources do you need to make sure that we bring this down? These are the resources. They put in the resources and let me see the improvement. So it makes it a lot easier for management to actually manage an organization when these standards are in place, because this analysis, improvement are all inculcated into it. And the software that you've got, that your platform is on, helps you with some of those statistics, okay, on those measurement and analysis. And that is why it's very important that we put in as much as possible into this platform so that that analysis will be fruitful. Okay? So if we have loads of customer complaints and they are not in the system, then we can't analyze. We cannot know where we are. And the perception, most organizations, is that when we raise these things, there is an idea of somebody did something wrong. No, that is not the purpose. The purpose is there was a problem. Why was there a problem? Every human being will not go and decide he wants to make something wrong just because he wants to. No. It might be, really, he's not well trained. He needs training. It's the responsibility of management to give me adequate training. All right? Or, I don't have resources. I've been out in the sun for how long and there is no help and there is no forklift and there is no, I'm confused, I am. All right? It could be many other things, but don't look at it as incompetence. In most cases, it is not. It is something that management wants to know. All right? They want to know about these things. Okay? And one of the things that happens, usually in this kind of scenarios, I'm trying to keep some of the stories out of it, but let me give you one story. This is something they call advanced safety audits. You might want to like to hear that. That's a new way of doing certain things. There was this husband and wife, they were driving somewhere in Scotland, and they smelt good bread coming from one of the filling stations that they had to take some fuel. And the wife said, wow, that bread reminds me of when I was young. I want to go get that bread. So she and her husband was a safety professional. They went into the little bakery at the back, far back of the filling station. And when they went in, the manager himself came, oh really, we want to eat something. He said, really? Come out, let me show you how we bake it. So they went into the kitchen. And there was this lady that was actually, taking out the trays and replacing them into the ovens. All right? And the wife stayed with the man, asking him about the place, and this guy, as a safety guy, came closer to the woman. And he said, so how is work? And she said, very fine. He said, are you okay? She said, yeah, I'm perfect, everything is fine. All right. If I were to ask you, that if there is one thing your manager can do to improve things around here to make you work better, what would it be? She said, no, I wouldn't want to go into that. No, I won't tell him. Don't worry. Just tell me. Really? She said, yeah. Then she just opened her sleeve, and you can see the marks of the burns that she's getting from those trays that she's putting in. And he said, since when have you been having these burns? She said, for the last 2 years that I was working here. So why didn't you tell him? Because I was afraid he might fire me and get someone with longer arms. That was her reason. He went, he told him, and he couldn't believe it that she was hiding all that from him. He said, you're like family to us, Anne. You should have told me. What was the solution? $10 gloves, heat resistant. $10. Right? So that kind of interaction and trust between an organization and its management needs to be there. Okay? Don't feel too much when you bring some of these things out. That time has passed. We are now in the time of continual improvement. They'll be happy to hear it so that we all put heads together to fix it. All right? That's how an organization develops. Okay? All right, enough digression. Awareness video, we'll send it through to you. Wouldn't waste time on that. It is a little long, and usually people just fall asleep when it starts, so we'll get out of that. Now, in conclusion of this part, let's look at quality and culture. What is the difference? We've talked about quality. What is the difference between quality and quality culture, and how it relates to processes? What's your idea of culture? What would you define culture as? As a human being, what is culture?
The way they follow.
A way of doing things that you follow, that you feel is the right way. Probably? Yes. And you could have yours. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The way which we are following it, the same thing which has been followed by the others, that is a process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So culture is a norm. It's something that I believe, all right, that is right and is the right way of doing things, all right? Individuals have their own cultures. Every individual has his. It's the same with organizations. Organizations as well have cultures, all right? And the culture of an organization, who are the custodians of that culture? The employees in the organization, all right? I'll give you an example. If I were to come to ArcelorMittal as a potential employee and I'm coming for interview, and when I come, it's supposed to be 10 o'clock, and I don't get interviewed till 11, the guy was late. How is it affecting my idea of the perception of the culture of this company? Maybe it's not really very strict here when it comes to time. People really don't have to show up. What about after my first week, I send an email and it takes a week for somebody to reply me? Maybe I don't need to reply my emails very frequently. Maybe the culture is you can just sit on an email and nothing happens. And that is how fragile culture is. Anybody that joins an organization, he comes in with the highest perception of culture. But he comes with a clean slate. He's looking at the people in the organization so that he will peg himself at where the culture is. And that is why culture is so important when it comes to quality. Whatever procedures you have, however good they are, if that culture is not preserved, there is nothing that you can do. Okay? And the way that we depict this sometimes is, for example, another story related to food. There was a great chain of restaurants. It's not McDonald's. Some people say it's Kentucky or whatever, but there was an American. He had this fantastic chain of restaurants, very successful. He was about 80 years old and he retired. He took his son, that had just finished Harvard, and said, come and take care of my restaurants. So he came in fresh from a very, very good guy. And the first week that he was there, the chief chef of all of the restaurants came to him and said, it's time for us to change the menus. Not the food in the menus, but the menu paper itself. And he said, why? This still looks good to me. He said, no. The process is we change it every 6 months for all of the restaurants. Why? Yeah, Papa does it always like that. That's the process. He said, no. How much does it cost? $600 per restaurant. No way, we're not going to. From now on, we are going to change it every year. What did he touch? He touched the process without looking at it properly. Which in turn, what? Will touch the culture. And I'll tell you how. It was not too long before the waiters realized that the menus were not as clean as they used to be when Papa was here. And they thought, maybe I don't need to change my uniform every single day like I used to. I can change, twice, once in 2 days or 3 days. Not too long, the cooks in the kitchen, the menus were not as clean as before. The waiters are not really as sharp as they used to be. Maybe I don't need to taste that soup 3 times like it says in the recipe. I can just taste it twice or once. What is coming down? Culture, and in consequence, the quality. It was not too long before the regular customers realized, not as clean, the soup doesn't taste quite as before. Maybe as Papa has left, we don't have to be coming back to this restaurant again. And we don't need to recommend it to our friends. Because he was saving $600 per restaurant for menus, and he touched on a process that affected culture. So every organization has got very, very fragile culture that needs to be maintained, and it's the people that work in the organization that maintain that. Quality systems are one thing, culture and people doing the right thing is another thing. And however good your quality management system is, it is nothing without the people. It's the people that make it work. Okay, it's just a tool. All right. Great, questions? All right, and that's the bit for this. All right. We can now go into your software, which we'll look at very, very quickly. How are we doing on time?
11:35.
All right, we can get this segment done in 10, 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, then we can be. Now, this is the first bit that you are going to see when you get onto your portal. This is the Qshare Central portal, and you will be assigned, or you must have been assigned already, a username and password. So all you have to do is put that in. For the purposes of this, we'll be using the administrator account, which Peters has access to. And then we'll just see quickly the tabs and where to find some of the things that we were talking about this morning. Oops. Before we get there, any questions on the previous segment? Yeah? Helpful? A little bit of a discussion? Yeah. Great. What am I seeing at the end there? It should be anything in there. It should be T. Yeah, a star or something in there.
No.
Where? Excellent. And usually you'll be greeted this way, all right? Some of the tabs that are here, you might not see them because they are rights enabled, okay? They're designed to show where you have rights to do that particular activity. So for example, backups, this is an administrator function. You wouldn't be seeing that. Yours will be starting from the policy. Remember what the policy is? Click on that, you see the policy. Already you are greeted by your quality policy, all right, when you open that, which fulfills the requirement of communication of the policy to employees in the organization. So it's good to keep your username and password handy so that when the person asks you or an auditor asks you for your policy, straight away you can open this page for them. Go up. Then we've got a tab for your manual, right? And then we've got a tab for your procedures. Each one of them, when you click on them, these are the sections in your manual. The index is there, introduction, your exclusions, you want to see them, the general requirements, your documentation and records, all of that is in there. And what does the manual do, remember? It's just a kind of introduction of, well, what the standard says, yeah, and where to find it in your organization. So if what you are interested in is documentation and records, once you click on there, it will now open that document, and there you will see the procedure that is related to that particular requirement. So there you go. So that's the whole procedure for documentation and records, and you'll be able to see where to find that documentation in your organization. Then we've got your procedures, your record formats. Don't bother with your record formats. They're all pretty much the same. You can search. If you know the procedure name or any part of it, handling, packaging, distribution, whatever, it will just give you all the procedures related to that. Then your record formats are here. All the formats for records that you need are in there. So if you do not know what format to use, for example, for leave application, do you have it in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, HR, for whatever it is, all your formats are in there so that you know you're using the right form for what you need. Then we've got, have you populated HSNE?
No.
You're not using that yet. No. So we've got a whole section on HSNE, it's enabled for you so that you can see your procedures, your whatever for HSNE specific activity. Then the objectives of the company, what are the objectives that have been set by top management? Are we going to reduce customer complaints by so and so %? Are we going to do whatever? They are all in there so that you know what the objective is, what the target is for getting to that objective, and who the owners are and the status. Okay? So where we are going. Does everybody have objectives open for them? Or are you
Only the department heads.
Only the department heads because they run it, right? Then meetings, these are all management review meetings. They're scheduled from here so we can see all the minutes of the meetings that you've been having previously. They are all in there, more of administration. Training, all the training, usually of people in the organization. Are you using that tab properly? Yeah. Okay, so everybody's training records as well will be in there. So you
Because the rights are given to the people here, everybody has a login or a password for this.
Not in this group here. I think only Karthik, Sajid, Jerry, Sunil don't have. Only you got and my boss, 3 of them. So normally what we do after this training session, then I put the rights on for everybody so you can log into the system. But if I give all the access before the training, then you might not know.
No, that's
and
fine.
yeah.
It's good, but in the office, anybody and everybody will be.
Yeah, in this organization, every single person has it. Because you guys are new, then after the training, you'll get the access. But as I said, sorry,
Go ahead.
as you said, you won't see all those tabs on the left-hand side. You'll get what's pertaining to your, like some of you may not see the purchasing tab because it doesn't involve your, you won't see things like maintenance. The maintenance will be mainly for maybe Sajid. On the other hand, Sajid might not see things like supply management, I think he'll see. Customer service. He won't see probably sales, for example. That procedure, he might see it, or might not see it. So it just depends which department you fall in and what you need to see that will be applicable for your department.
Right, and maintenance as well. This is where maintenance records, booklets, whatever it is that you have, machines that are key process equipment, you take care of those maintenance in there. Calibration is very important when you deal with weights and stuff like that, and it goes to the root of your contract with your customer. Then you need to have calibration done. So all the calibrations and when they need to, you've got a lot that is expired. They're all in there.
That's all the old equipment from the other yard which we're not using now.
Okay, all right. Okay. With the new Qshare anyway, it is not in use. There is a way that you can just take it off. That is a big wrong. Then supplier management. This is all to do with your supplier problems. When they come in, you can analyze that data. How many problems have we had with this transporter or that transporter and things like that. They are all in there for you. And all of your suppliers are also listed in there so that you'll be able to track their performance and who is who right in there. And supplier performance is also a requirement of the standard that we need to follow. Customer complaints and feedback. This is where
Just go back on the supplier side.
Yes.
The problem?
Yeah, we saw something pending. What is that? This is pending since July 2000 and what is pending status means?
Pending status, okay, let me, Abdullah, can I take over here?
Yeah, please go ahead.
The pending status there is, if you are the head of the department or you are running the department and there is a supplier problem, you as the department head, whoever has the problem, going to input the problem and you're going to bring the problem to a close and say what you've done. Okay? So when that issue has not been handled and the person that's inputted there has not closed it off, it will say pending until they close it off.
Okay.
Right? So it's not, sometimes it may be one person's responsibility, sometimes it may go down the line, he may be waiting for a response from somebody else or from the supplier for that matter. The supplier may not be responding, or any department within the organization may not be responding, that's holding him up from closing that up. So that's why it could be pending, or in the worst case scenario, it just could be sheer negligence that they don't do the work and it just stands as pending.
How does it reflect when the auditors come?
When the auditors come, that will be regarded as a finding, because we have a time frame to close out these issues. Not necessarily 1 week or 7 days or maybe 14 days, but it should be closed out. That is gone over a year and
Yeah,
some. Yeah.
because 12 things are still open here.
That will reflect as a finding, and those issues are continually being addressed with those people that have opened those complaints or supplier problems, and they just choose to ignore it. So if they choose to ignore it, we send 1, 2 mails, 3 mails, send a couple of reminders, send an official mail. They still, there's nothing they can, if they don't want to do anything, then we can't force them to do it. Okay? So what happens in this case, the worst case scenario is the auditors come in, they do an audit, they find your department is underperforming because of ABC, this being one of them, that you don't close out your supplier problem, so you don't actually know how many times you've had a particular issue with that supplier, and you keep having these issues, and it affects the whole chain. The supplier doesn't supply you on time, or supplies you a non-conforming product or a damaged product, you give that to your customer, the sales return, it impacts the entire company in all the different divisions. From your yard, operations, your purchasing, it affects your logistics, it affects your costing.
Is it a risk of losing the certification at some point of time?
It will be a finding, and it will come up as another finding. It can be a risk of losing certification as well. Because if you're not addressing, see, the problem is if you're not addressing your problems and you're not analyzing, as we just learned now. for you to address, analyze, is to find a way forward. If you're not finding a way forward, how are you going to ensure that your performance is
subject in
optimal?
the management committee meeting of the
Management reviews, they're all addressed in management review meeting when we sit with the CEO, the CFO, all the department heads, and we address it with them. So there's always, at that point, what I found here in the past 2.5 years is, at that point only they'll give you some excuse and say we'll sort it out, but then it goes for another 6 months, nothing is done until the next review meeting. So
Okay, so we'll take care of this. I mean, this is something which is, there's no point making a procedure if you don't follow it.
Absolutely.
see, the other problem about things like this here is that when they have a problem like this, they look at me and say, no, it's my job. I'm not the purchasing guy. So I don't know what problems you're having. I will oversee and analyze. That's my job. But it's not my job to confront the customer and find out why you gave me a damaged product or why this product has come damaged when we ask you for good product. My job will be to phone the supplier and say that, okay, fine. In the past 1 year, we've had 67 examples or 67 times where you've delivered damaged products. This now, you're either going to show us your corrective action as to how you're going to put this right, but I won't phone them after 67 times. Maybe I'll see in 1 month they've done this like 14 times. Then we'll get in touch with the supplier and
No
say,
problem, this is something
show us
our
the
internal thing.
corrective
And,
action.
that would be
Yeah.
good.
For me, it's very, very new that I'm seeing, and it is good, what he says is right, I mean, he cannot force people down the road that they should do it, I mean, this is
Absolutely.
somebody's job, we should handle it.
Yeah.
And one of the points also that is quite important is that this portal is designed to help spread the work to the right people. So for example, customer complaints. In some organization you find out that they will say, oh, the quality guy is the one to put in a customer complaint. Now, this system is designed that even if you have a tablet and you're out there, you have internet access, you can get onto it, put in the customer complaint.
IT person sitting here right now? Who is the IT guy?
No. Why you
Otherwise, I can tell you because, okay, not the same issue, but we have a similar issue in my previous assignment where it's a compliance process because
Right.
I was responsible for several years for Iran, and Iran is under compliance from all the agencies globally. It's a
Absolutely.
much bigger risk than losing your simply.
Definitely.
So, and it is very normal that we being in a flow of work, not that I intentionally trying to avoid what you are saying, but I will say, oh, these are important and this is something which I can do when I want to do, and it doesn't happen that way. And during the audit from KPMG, Deloitte, we came to know these are the shortcomings of this audit. So what we did, and which actually worked well,
Right.
is with the help of our IT team, we defined it's a job which will be done, take some time. That, for example, this gentleman is responsible for this, and these are the open issues related to his, because here I can see Davinder, for example. Tomorrow it can be my name or his name, right? So it's an auto email which will pop up on
Right.
a window, let's say with a frequency of 3 to 4 days. So even if I like to avoid, because I may not be logging in your system, you can see how many people really log in. You may give me a password, but it's
No,
very
we got
rarely
the
that I do.
login history as well.
Yeah?
We have the login history.
You
We
have
know
the history and you can do the analysis, how many of them really
the
do it and what is the
history,
frequency.
login history is presented in the management review meetings.
So what happens is, in this case, when it comes in front of my eyes, so I'm forced to accept and do it.
Exactly.
So it is something which we have done and it works out, and it is only one-time job.
This system also does that.
Is it?
Yeah.
So
It will send you an email.
reminder which comes
Email
to the
reminder.
individuals?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You'll have an email pop up, and in fact, with the new Qshare is even beyond that. As a manager, you can even say anybody under me that has an action, if after 3 reminders, I want to be copied.
No, no.
You know?
I mean,
So there's so many things that can be done with the notifications, but it's
the
important.
point is, I can tell you that a lot of time we follow certain things because we have a daily routine job to be done.
Absolutely. Day job, yeah.
By that sheer pressure, not that a person is not doing it.
Absolutely.
He just tries to, say, okay, fine, it will be handled. Like I see AMI, okay, AMI is just next door, I will handle with them. But
Yes.
but these are system requirements if we have to get the certification, so it is important that we spend some time on that.
Absolutely.
And,
No, you made a valid point. What people tend to think, or what they see, is that they don't see this as one of the processes of the workflow that they're going to do in a day. They see this as a nuisance, or they see this as,
this is
you know,
normal. I mean,
yeah.
it's not. We all do it. I
Yeah.
mean, there are certain things. you know, a salesperson will be always interested, okay, how much he sold at the end of the day.
Absolutely, that's what
Or
is measured against.
like when you drive your car at times, you see, okay, signal is still, you know,
Yeah.
I can make pass.
Pass.
This is normal.
Yeah.
So it's not out of any other reason that he doesn't want to follow.
Then we come back to culture. Then culture must change.
But he's also
You know,
absolutely.
there is a pressure.
Yeah.
I agree with you, culture must change. But
Yeah.
please understand, while it is all said, and I heard it was a very nice presentation which you gave. And there are so much pressure on the individual today to
Which
perform.
is quite true. Yes.
So, while we are saying, I mean, very importantly, because antitrust and compliance law process which we follow in the group, I'm not supposed to say that, okay, I heard that XYZ mill is offering at this.
Right.
But I must know what they are doing, because otherwise I cannot sell my material. So culturally, yes, you're right, we are told not to, but then still we are supposed to know it and supposed to report at some point of time, maybe different wording.
Absolutely.
Because our management needs such report, otherwise he will say, what are you showing me? It's nothing. I mean, it doesn't have any value. So these are, I mean...
And it's a very, very typical scenario. It's very real. Because people have got their day jobs. They've got things they are focusing on. There are certain things that they are being measured against as they are, and they will give preference to that. Alright? So what we need is a system that can engage the individual. So at least they need a pop-up and a reminder that things needs to be done. That's fine. But if not, they will always concentrate on that
Otherwise,
daily.
you know, they will prepare when the audit is coming, okay, on Monday. Like most of us, during the deadline today is our
Right,
MRI date, so we should sit today and try to finalize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a very, very good point you brought at the end. Audit day, and then we put all the records. You know, it's a very, very good point. I remember there was an audit I went to, and I went to the gentleman, and he brought out his audit. You know, he's a guy that does some inspections, and he brought it out, and I said, "Hi, how are you? I'm good, yeah." I opened it, went through they were all filled in one pen. I said, "You did this yesterday," yeah? And he said, "Yes," because he's really very clear with me. I mean, but the question is, then I asked him, does this add value to you? Because really, if it adds value to him, and he's still performing his job well, and there are no problems, probably he doesn't need to do this. I asked his manager, who asked Kumar to do this? And he said, I didn't. I said, well, who asked you to do it? He said, it's a former manager that asked me to do it. And this manager said, I said, do you need it? This manager said, no, I don't need it. Kumar, do you need it? No, I don't need it. It doesn't add value to me. And straight away, yeah, you don't need it. They have other processes or other, what you call it, checks and balances to ensure that process is okay. That signing of that stuff, you could have slept. You don't need to do it overnight. So some of these things are there. You know, people sometimes, but the first question in that kind of scenario is really ask the person. Maybe it's not even adding value to him. Because to be honest, if there is something that adds value to you and it has an impact on your performance and what you do, people in normal circumstances take it seriously and they do it. Excellent. Then internal problems, this is where you can click anything. Health and safety is very good for this. You can put anything to do with health and safety where you see hazards or whatever. They are all internal problems. Or there is a problem with one thing or the other. Just put it in. They will compile it and they will have a look at it if there is anything that can be done. Then we've got your audit staff, which probably you might not have much to do with it, but you get your notifications if you are involved in an audit anyway. But this is where we keep all the audit records in the organization, and if you're interested, you can actually see some of these audit reports in there. You've got the rights for that. Customer surveys is a requirement of the standard that you need to survey your customers at least once a year to just get their perception of what you do. So the level of their satisfaction needs to be measured, and that is presented in management reviews, and we need to show continual improvement in that area as well. This is where we do all the surveys. The system, as far as you put all your customers in there, it sends them all the emails, and then they're supposed to be able to click on that and put it through. Corrective actions, same. This is where you deal with corrective actions. So you raise it, there are people that need to work on it, you can go in there, work on it, and you do. Preventive actions as well are there. What's the difference between a corrective and preventive action?
Prevention is better than
Correction. Absolutely. That's a very good one. So here, in most cases, the problem has already happened, so we're fixing it, and then of course preventive actions. Defensive driver training, what is it? If they say all of us or all of our drivers have to go for defensive driver training, preventive. Yeah, it's not that they've already been in accidents, but we don't want them. We want to make that likelihood a lot less. This is managing account as an administrative function. You will be seeing that all of these system managing reports, these are all what you call it. And then we've got the Qshare support, which you can click on and it gives you an email template that you can write if you have any questions regarding the software itself. Right? Questions? That's a very quick run through of the system.
Can I just add one thing, Abdallah?
Please.
All those tabs you'll see on the left-hand side. In a system where it is not, this is basically 95% paperless. Okay? In a conventional system or a normal system that you'll see in a company, if you go to another company that doesn't have a system like this here, you're going to have sometimes 2, sometimes 3 files for every tab you see on the left-hand side. You're going to have a cupboard full of maybe 30 plus files to handle all of this paperwork. And then you're going to get stuff like paperwork. If there's a non-conformance, you're going to get paperwork lying on your table, his table, and everybody's table, and there'll be no track of who's got which document, and it becomes a logistical nightmare when it comes to paperwork. So now, why I'm driving this here is because we've been spoiled with this system, and people don't see the advantage of this system at the moment. But if you work in a company where they don't have the system and everything comes down back to the manual system of paperwork, then you'll appreciate what you have here. So the point I'm trying to make is, let's appreciate this system in the sense that you don't have to come to me if there's a problem 3-4 times in a week or 6 times in a month and say we need this, we need that, we need that. You've got it access right on your system, on your laptop or your iPad or wherever you want to use it from. And also, you could be sitting at home and there's a problem that you forgot to close up before you went on leave, but you know how to close it out, you know what to do to close it out, but you left your laptop probably in the office, but you know how to log in. You can sit at home, whether you're in India, you're in Paris, whether you're in America, log in, close it out, you know the audit's coming up, when you get back, you are clean. So that is some of the advantages of this. I wouldn't say the main advantages, but some of the advantages of having this system as opposed to having the conventional paper system with files. Now you can imagine, you go on holiday, the file is sitting in your office, you need to close something out, what do? Okay, so you're stuck. So I'm just trying to drive the point across that let's appreciate this, and if you can work with this system, it is really going to make your life very, very easy as opposed to having the conventional system. And I've been fighting this now with management already for the past 6 months, where they want a lot of things to be done back now on paper. If there's a non-conformance, they want me to walk up to you all and give, not to you all particularly, but to anybody in the company, to walk up to you all and give you all a paper to say this is a non-conformance against that particular thing, which you have to fill in and give.